Hello, my wonderful community of seekers, soul searchers, and spiritual solution finders. It's always such a joy to settle in with my cup of tea and chat with you about some of the incredible resources that Spirit provides us with to help us take creative control over our lives. Today, we are going to chat about the power of repetition and how to add it to our spiritual toolbox in a way that is best suited to your own individual needs. Okay. So the first time I heard about using the power of repetition was from a friend of mine. She was a brand new friend at the time. We had just both written our first book, and we both had the same goal of wanting to become an international best-selling author. At one point during our first meeting, her alarm went off, and she excused herself. She wasn't gone long, maybe 5 minutes, and when she returned, she shared with me that she has her alarm set to go off every 2 hours because she is working with repetition and spiritual journaling to help manifest her goal of becoming an internationally best-selling author. Now, of course, when I hear this, I lean all the way in because I love learning new spiritual tools for co-creating with the universe. Here's what she told me she's been doing for over a month to make her dream of becoming a successful author a reality. Every 2 hours, when her alarm goes off, she sits down somewhere quiet and writes, "I am an internationally best-selling author." And she writes it 25 times. While she is writing this one phrase over and over, she tries not to think of anything else. She gives her entire focus to these 7 words that express her sacred wish. And for just that moment, she allows herself to feel as though these words are true. So I immediately recognize that this form of repetition works similarly to affirmations, right? Because an affirmation is anything that we repeat to ourselves throughout the day with enough repetition begins to shape our perception and ultimately our reality. I think it's important to mention before I continue that the power of repetition works for better or for worse. That's the thing about powers, right? They can be used for creation, or they can be used for destruction. They can be negative self-talk is terribly, terribly common. People do it a lot, and some people even do it almost all the time. They get into the habit of repeating things like, "I'm so sick of this or that," or a really common one that is very sneaky is saying, "It's always something," every time life doesn't go according to plan. And when we get into the habit of repeating this kind of negative self-talk, well, it works the same way as positive affirmations because the universe is energetic and it's always listening. And our thoughts have actual energetic properties that pulse out into the universe and attract more of the same energy. So we have to be careful about what kind of conversation we are having with the universe about ourselves, okay? Because the universe only ever has one reply, and it's always the same. The universe just says yes. That's why I like to tell my clients, give the universe something amazing to say yes to. But getting back to my friend, when I learned her method for evoking the power of repetition, which I now know is actually a form of self-hypnosis, I thought, I want to do everything I can within my power to become an international best-selling author too. So I asked myself, should I try doing the same thing? Should I set my alarm to go off every 2 hours? And here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with her method. And guess what? Spoiler alert. Her method worked for her. She did become an internationally best-selling author. But I chose not to use her exact technique because when I imagined my phone alarm going off all the time, interrupting what I was doing every 2 hours, and when I imagined writing the same sentence over and over again, I just felt like, ugh. That does not sound fun to me. And I'd get so tired of my phone going off like that. I feel like throwing it out the window. So I recognized almost immediately that the technique that was working for her wasn't going to work for me in the same way because I wasn't going to enjoy it. My emotional energy around having to do it was going to be off. I wouldn't be in the moment feeling purely like, yes, I am an international best-selling author, because I'd also be annoyed by my alarm and distracted by having to break away from whatever I was working on all the time. Repetition is a powerful tool for taking creative control over our reality, and it really does work. But my friend's technique for evoking the power of repetition wasn't the most effective way for me personally, because I wouldn't have enjoyed doing it, okay? My mindset around doing it her way was as though it were a chore. At first I wondered to myself, well, Alena, should you tell people that? Because a lot of people might really love using my friend's technique as part of their spiritual practice. And the people who love using it, they would get amazing results. Should you tell people that her technique is one of the spiritual tools that you've chosen not to include in your spiritual toolbox? And you know what? The reason I decided to just let you know is because I want you to know that you can do the same thing too. Your spiritual toolbox doesn't need to look exactly like mine or anyone else's for that matter. You have total creative control over discovering what spiritual tools bring you the most joy, because ultimately the tools that bring you the most joy are going to be the ones that work the best for making your dreams a reality. So I needed a version of spiritual journaling that worked for me as an individual so that I could evoke the incredible power of repetition to set myself up to win too. So I thought, okay, what are the most important aspects of my friend's spiritual journaling technique that make it effective? And how can I adapt it to bring me the same amazing results? Well, there's the power of repetition. Okay, I'm going to need to include that. And I love journaling, so that's great. She also told me when she's writing her phrases down that she's picturing it as though it already happened in as much detail as possible. So I knew I needed to incorporate that as well. At the time, I happened to have an event coming up here in my hometown, my Thrive conference, and I had the goal of having at least 100 people there. So I decided to experiment with my own version of spiritual journaling to help me meet that goal. So here's what I came up with. Every night, I would sit down with my journaling, and instead of just writing down one phrase over and over, I began elaborately describing the day of my event, which really helped me to picture it because I was engaging my imagination. One night, I described the event center in great detail, filled with people and not an empty seat in sight. I talked about the sound of everyone chatting together, the low roar of the crowd bouncing off the walls of the room, the excitement on the people's faces, and the joy and the excitement and gratitude I felt to have the opportunity to speak with over 100 people about my book. Another night, I described what I was wearing, how it felt to be on stage, how the audience was reacting to what I had to share with my theme and what I had to share with them. On another night, I described the way people were responding after the event. I described how the audience felt and also how I felt about successfully completing my Thrive event and meeting my goal of having at least 100 people in attendance. On another night, I felt inspired to sketch out a few pictures. I had in my head an event center filled with wonderful people. I exploded all my senses, what I could see, hear, taste, smell. Yes, I even talked about what we served for lunch. And at the end of each spiritual journaling session, I would make a promise to myself of one thing I was going to do the next day to set myself up to win. Whether it was something specific to organize for the event or it was related to preparing myself spiritually through different forms of self-care, such as getting out into nature or reading something inspirational for 30 minutes. And guess what? It worked. My Thrive conference was attended by over 100 people. It went so well, and I was so thrilled. So, just to outline my spiritual journaling technique for you, here are the key elements that will make it as powerfully effective as possible. Choose a very specific outcome and go into as much detail as you can about what it looks like and how it makes you feel. At the end of each session, include a promise to yourself of one thing you will do tomorrow to set yourself up to win. And be sure to include things that prepare you spiritually as well as physically. Self-care things such as enjoying a hobby, doing spiritual reading, and practicing meditation. When you are writing each night to activate a specific outcome, your vision is going to continue to evolve. So be sure to include all the new details your mind creates for you. Add illustrations to your journal entries. You don't have to be some great artist. Just draw up quick sketches that emulate the images you have in your mind, and you will be perfect. And it can be fun too. If you feel inspired to use color, by all means go for it, especially if you have certain colors really coming through to you clearly in your mind. Part of evoking the power of repetition is keeping up with a routine of writing in your journal every single night. It doesn't have to take a long time. You just need to write until you feel that energetic shift that happens when your mind starts to really believe. Try this technique. It works great for me because I love spiritual journaling, and it helps me to access the power of repetition. If using repetition in another way works better for you, such as the way my friend used to create her book success, please try her technique instead. I want you to take what you like and leave the rest. Your spiritual toolbox is as unique as you are, and there is pure freedom in your ability to explore and create the routines and exercise that work best for you. Thank you so much for joining me today. And if you'd like more help with evoking the power of repetition, click the link in the description, because you're going to love 7-Day Reset, which is perfect for clearing out old patterns to make way for new ones that will support your goals and help you create a life you love. And speaking of love, also remember that love is spirit. And my friends, spirit is love. Namaste. Thanks for watching. Don't miss out on a single thing. Subscribe below. And here's something else I think you'll enjoy. Namaste.